Sirens cut through the night. Flashing red lights bounce off wet asphalt. And somewhere in Los Angeles, 1972, a voice crackles through the radio. Station 51 KMG 365. That line, simple as it sounds, became a heartbeat. For 6 seasons, Emergency turned living rooms into fire stations, where every rescue was real enough to make you hold your breath. It wasn't just a show. It was a generation learning what bravery looked like, in real time. Now, more than 50 years later, that world is fading. Some of its heroes have left us forever. Others, against all odds, still stand. Their faces changed, their voices softer, but their stories? Still burning bright. So tonight, we're not just revisiting a series. We're revisiting the people who made it unforgettable. Who they were, what they became, and what time has done to the men and women of Emergency. Stay close because some of what you'll hear will surprise you. And hey, if stories of heroes and heartbreak still hit you where it matters, you already belong here. Before the rescues, there was a leap of faith. Emergency premiered on NBC in 1972, a brainchild of producer Jack Webb and showrunner Robert A. Sinider. Their idea was radical for prime time. Put viewers inside the split-second handshake between firefighters and hospital doctors, and make it feel real. Rampart Hospital on one end, Station 51 on the other. On screen, Dr. Kelly Brackett, Dixie McCall, and Dr. Joe Early anchored the medicine. In the field, paramedics Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto carried the weight of lives in the back of a moving rig. It wasn't glamour, it was procedure, pressure, and humanity. Here's the part that still stuns. The show didn't just mirror history, it nudged it forward. Across the US, cities looked at those episodes and said, "We need that." Funding, training, protocols, Emergency helped ignite the modern paramedic era, one living room at a time. If you grew up with that radio crackle, you remember the feeling someone out there is calm when the world is not. That's the quiet promise of the series, and why it still finds us even now. They weren't just acting partners, they were married. On Emergency, she was Dixie McCall, the unshakable head nurse with a voice that could calm chaos. He was Dr. Joe Early, the cool-headed neurologist whose quiet confidence steadied every scene. Off-screen, Julie London and Bobby Troop were the real heart of Rampart Hospital, and of each other. When the cameras rolled, their chemistry didn't have to be faked. Julie's glance, Bobby's half-smile, they spoke a language learned through music, smoke, and years of shared pain. Before Emergency, both had lived entire lifetimes in the public eye. Julie, once a sultry jazz singer, had already etched her name in history with Cry Me a River. Bobby, the jazz man behind Route 66, had seen fame rise, fade, and rise again. But fame has a cruel rhythm. By the late 80s, Bobby's heart, long burdened by jazz nights and whiskey haze, began to falter. Then tragedy hit harder. In 1995, Julie suffered a massive stroke that silenced her voice and left her half-paralyzed. For 5 years, Bobby became her caretaker, watching the woman who once owned every stage slowly disappear behind hospital walls. He once said, "When Julie died, I lost half my soul." He wasn't exaggerating. In 1999, he collapsed from a heart attack in UCLA Medical Center, the very image of Rampart that had made him famous. A year later, Julie followed, her body finally giving in to the same smoke that had carried her music for decades. Together, they left behind not just wealth or fame, but a haunting reminder that love doesn't always survive the body. Sometimes, it just lingers in the silence after the final song. Today, fans remember them not as a tragic couple, but as a perfect harmony. The cool doctor and the warm nurse who made medicine feel human. Their love story remains the soul of Emergency, fragile, flawed, and unforgettable. And just as Rampart Hospital closed its last case, the firehouse doors of Station 51 swung open. Because the next stories belong to the men who ran into danger and sometimes couldn't outrun their own. Every station has its heartbeat, and for Station 51, it was the crew. The laughter, the teasing, the bond that only people who face fire together can understand. But behind the helmets and sirens, their real lives carried flames of a different kind. Tim Donnelly, the forever prankster, Chet Kelly. At just 28, he gave the show its comic relief, the quick grin in a room full of pressure. But when the lights went out, the laughter faded. In the 80s, Donnelly's life derailed. Cocaine, divorce, and regret gnawed at him. He lost almost everything. Still, he kept showing up at fan events, smiling through the pain. The jokes, once his armor, became his only way to hide the loneliness. In 2021, at 77, his heart finally gave out. Not in a blaze, but quietly, at home. The man who'd once made us laugh about danger was lost to one he couldn't escape. Then there was Michael Norrell, Captain Hank Stanley. Calm, composed, always the one to keep the team grounded. But even leaders break. Between acting, writing, and producing, he poured everything into Emergency. Sometimes too much. His marriage dissolved under the weight of endless hours and quiet ambition. In later years, heart disease came for him too. Still, he wrote until his final days, crafting a memoir that never saw publication. When he passed in 2023 at 85, the headlines were quiet, but in every rerun, his voice of command still carries authority. He was the glue that held Station 51 together, on screen and off. And finally, William Boyett, the man with the iron stare. Always the officer, always in control. Decades of cigarettes after World War II left his lungs in ruins. By the 90s, the commanding presence was gone, replaced by a frail man gasping for air. He outlived his wife, but not the grief. In 2004, pneumonia took him, just shy of 78. For viewers, he'll always be the voice of discipline. But the truth is, he spent his last years surrounded not by applause, but silence. 3 men, 3 different paths, but all carried the same invisible weight. A lifetime of playing heroes while quietly losing their battles in real life. And as their stories faded into memory, others from Emergency kept the flame alive. The quiet professionals who didn't seek fame, but left behind something far more enduring. Every great story needs its steady hands, the ones who hold the world together when the spotlight drifts elsewhere. In Emergency, those were the faces you didn't always remember by name, but could never forget once they appeared. Take Vince Howard, the police officer whose calm presence bridged chaos and control. For 65 episodes, he stood as the voice of order, grounding the adrenaline. Off-screen, he lived much the same way. No scandals, no headlines, just hard work. He moved from one show to another, from The Twilight Zone to Lethal Weapon 3, always the dependable man behind the badge. But years of non-stop work took their toll. By the early 2000s, his health had declined, his energy spent long before his time. In 2002, at 72, Vince Howard passed away quietly, the kind of ending he might have written for himself, calm, dignified, faithful to duty. Then there was Virginia Gregg, the unforgettable Wilma Jacobs. Sharp eyes, sharper wit, the kind of actress who could fill a room with just a glance. Her voice became legend long before Emergency. She was the chilling voice of Norman Bates's mother in Psycho. But decades of smoking silenced that voice too soon. Lung cancer took her in 1986, at 70. Still, her legacy lived on in echoes. Her voice remains one of the most iconic in cinematic history, even if most never knew her name. Kenneth Tobey, Captain Gordon Trigg, another pillar. Before Emergency, he had already starred in The Thing from Another World and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. He was the face of 1950s sci-fi, a hero of monsters and mayhem. But time has a way of shrinking even the biggest frames. By the 1990s, he was living quietly, health fading, far from the glory days. In 2002, he too passed at 85. Yet when fans of early science fiction gather, his name still glows, a quiet nod to a man who helped build an entire genre. And Ross Elliott, the unassuming foreman whose face popped up across the golden age of TV, he'd been everywhere. Perry Mason, The Twilight Zone, Gunsmoke, always the professional, never the celebrity. Cancer eventually caught him in 1999, after years in a nursing home. His last days were quiet, but his work remains woven through television's history, the steady rhythm between the stars. These were the unsung backbone of Emergency, the ones who didn't chase fame, but gave the show its realism, its gravity, its truth. Their stories remind us that not every hero wears the spotlight. Some simply hold it steady for others to shine. And speaking of heroes still shining, a few of them, against every odd, are still here with us, still attending conventions, shaking hands, smiling through memories that span half a century. Not every siren fades. Some keep echoing, softer maybe, but still clear enough to remind us that a few of Station 51's crew are still out there, smiling at the memories rather than running from them. First, Robert Fuller, Dr. Kelly Brackett himself. Back then, he was the definition of composure. A sharp jaw, steady eyes, and the kind of authority that could make you believe every diagnosis. But Fuller was no Hollywood cliché. He dodged the traps that took so many of his peers. No scandals, no burnouts, no addictions. When the Sirens went silent, he traded the chaos of sets for the calm of ranch life in Texas. Today, at 92, he still greets fans at conventions, shaking hands, signing photos, laughing like an old friend you haven't seen in decades. He once said, "The greatest thing about living this long is seeing people still care." It's not nostalgia keeping him alive, it's gratitude. Then there's Ron Pinkard, the face of Dr. Mike Morton. the man audiences trusted to keep Station 51's crew alive. Rumors have circled for years about his passing, but make no mistake, Ron Pinkard is very much alive. After Emergency, he kept working in television, later serving as a public representative for the real Los Angeles Fire Department, life imitating art once again. Now retired, he enjoys a quieter life, occasionally reuniting with fans who still call him Doctor. He smiles, knowing that for many he'll always be the man in the white coat who never panicked. And Marco Lopez Chuye, the firefighter whose dry humor made Station 51 feel like home. He gave the show its pulse of warmth, a quick remark that could cut the tension after a tough rescue. Lopez also remains among us. Though retired from acting, he lives a peaceful life away from the spotlight, still recognized by people who light up and say, "Hey, you're Marco from Emergency." He laughs, nods, and keeps walking, proud but humble. There's something poetic about that. While so many of his castmates left too soon, Lopez quietly carried their stories forward, living proof that the legacy of Emergency wasn't just fiction, it was family. 3 men, 3 survivors of a show that changed television and medicine alike. They remind us that longevity isn't just about years lived. It's about memories kept alive, stories told, and fans who never stop listening. But there was one more voice in Emergency that deserves its own moment. A real one, not an actor, not a line from a script. A man whose words literally saved lives while the cameras were rolling. You might not recognize his face, but you'd know his voice anywhere. That calm, commanding tone that opened every episode. Station 51, KMG 365. It wasn't a performance, it was the real thing. Sam Lanier wasn't an actor playing a dispatcher, he was one. A genuine Los Angeles County fire dispatcher, recording his lines between real emergency calls. While the cameras rolled on sound stages, Lanier sat in the actual dispatch center, juggling life and fiction at the same time. When he spoke into that radio, those weren't rehearsed words. They were muscle memory, years of keeping his voice steady while chaos exploded around him. He didn't chase fame, didn't take interviews, didn't step into Hollywood circles. He just did his job, the same job that saved lives long before Emergency ever aired. And that's exactly why his voice mattered. Think about it. Every siren, every call, every mission began with him. He was the invisible pulse of the series, the bridge between the real and the imagined. Even today, when fans hear that radio crackle, something inside stirs. Because Sam Lanier wasn't pretending to be a hero. He already was one. And as that voice fades into static, we're left with the people he once called into action. The heroes, the heartbreaks, and the echoes of Emergency that still live on half a century later. Half a century is a long time for any show to stay alive in memory. Yet somehow, Emergency never really left. It just settled quietly in the hearts of those who grew up with it. The sirens may have stopped, but the feeling never did. What made it different wasn't the rescues or the flames, it was the truth. The show respected the people it portrayed, the paramedics, the doctors, the dispatchers, ordinary humans facing impossible moments, doing what had to be done before the world even noticed them. That honesty shaped a generation. After the series aired, cities across America began creating real paramedic systems modeled after the show. What started as entertainment turned into infrastructure, art literally saving lives. And maybe that's why watching Emergency today still hits differently. You don't just see actors on a set, you see reminders of courage, loss, and love. The kind that doesn't fade with reruns. Each frame feels like a tribute to everyone who ever answered a call they couldn't ignore. But there's a bittersweet truth to it all. For every fan still watching, many of the people who built those memories are now gone. Julie London, Bobby Troop, Tim Donnelly, Michael Norrell, so many others. Their voices may be silent, but the stories they told keep pulsing through time. And that's the quiet magic of legacy. It outlives us, not through fame or fortune, but through the moments that still move people decades later. The faces of Emergency have aged, disappeared, or grown faint, but their impact is still alive every time someone hears that radio crackle and feels a small spark of hope. So which of them stayed with you the most? Was it Dixie's steady grace, Brackett's firm voice, or maybe the laughter echoing from Station 51? Whichever it was, take a second, breathe it in, because remembering them keeps their story alive. And if this journey brought back even one good memory, well, you already know what to do. Stick around. There are more stories waiting to be rediscovered. And if you'd like to keep the story going, just click the one on your screen. It's waiting for you.